This is week 5 of my development on Dune, a sand surfing combat roguelike game. For this week, I didn't record any footage because it was mostly meant to be a bug fixing week, but there were actually quite a few smaller features that I added. So just enjoy the footage of me playing it at the end of the week in the background, while I list off a lot of the features that I added, and then I will discuss the what I plan to add in the future. I also have a Discord link down in the description where you can follow my progress on the game as I continue it tomorrow and throughout the whole week for the next few weeks to come. And I will post updates there and before I make devlogs on them at the end of the week. So be sure to hop on and provide any feedback or suggestions you might have. Anyways, to get started, I had some play testers who tested the game in its state, and they gave me some feedback on it. The first thing they had feedback on was that the enemies were too difficult. So to fix that, I made a new barge variant that only had one sail and one cannon. This would make an easier target for newer players to get accustomed to the combat system. I fixed the worm AI so they will now pounce at their enemies, because originally they only just slid across the sand towards you. But I feel like the pounce makes them stand out more from a distance and makes them scarier as well. I added a fully functional skybox, which has distant sand in it to make the desert feel larger, and it blends in pretty well with the chunk generation. There is a kick-off ability where if the player is moving slower than 20 meters per second, they can press space to immediately boost up to that speed. This is to fix an issue where it takes like a whole minute to get up to speed at the start of the game, and also makes it so if you crash into something, if you're fast enough, you can evade sudden death by vultures. I did a rebalance of the board's turning efficiency. The board now turns faster, but you lose more velocity from doing so, especially with a sharp turn, because at the time every turn I made was a sharp turn. I also did a complete rework of all the particles. Instead of just a bunch of floating pixels, they now actually look like dust clouds, which also makes the worms stand out more when they're tunneling along the ground. And it was a much needed visual change. I also replaced all the ruined buildings with rocks, which just fit in more naturally with the desert. Don't worry, the buildings will come back. But those were the only updates that week. It was mostly bug fixing, and I was busy for the whole week with other things. But from this, now that we're all caught up, I want to discuss my future plans. Going forward, the biggest thing I want to add is a progression system for longer playtime and variation. I want there to be biome regions and such, so the further you travel out from the spawn, the tougher enemies you find, and so on and so forth. That way you don't just encounter the high-level missile boats, along with the one-sail barges that I just added. as there is really no reason to go after the missile boats instead of playing it safe. I also want to, of course, have health progression and healing so that these runs could last longer, and so that newer players don't just die right out the gate. I want to do this by adding merchants, which would spawn around the world, and are single use but would let you trade in some of your loot for upgrades or healing. I am going to have to do some design and some thinking on what these upgrades should be, but I will add those as I go along. The loot you spend will be subtracted from your end score, but I want to have a separate score for the loot you collect so that you can track those separately. But in terms of regions, I want them to not only to have like scaling the scaling enemies, but I also want them to have slightly different generation, boneyard probabilities, and so forth. There are also quite a few other ideas I had. I want to add some form of boss to the game, some extra environmental hazards like maybe sandstorms, a saving feature so that you can save and quit for longer runs, and I want to add giant unique structures around the world for exploration. And finally, I have a plan to re-add the surfing bandits into the game, but with a whole new approach to their AI and everything. If you have any other ideas of what I should add to the game, just hop onto the Discord and just leave a nice little note for me, and I'll be sure to check them out. I would appreciate your feedback on what I have so far, and you can feel free to leave feedback on what I work on throughout the week. But that is all I have for now. So I will be posting Devlog 6 on Friday or Saturday with a whole new week of progress to talk about. So I can't wait to hear your feedback, and until then, goodbye.